Hey, 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 Fit Mama. Jen Oliver here, your host of the Fit Mama podcast. This is the work in to your workout. Welcome, Fit Mama, to this week's episode. This one is a real treat for me, as I have one of the most knowledgeable women on the deep core that I have ever met, and I get to bring her to you today. This is Renee. Renee Meloche has been a trained Pilates instructor since 2000 and is a trainer of other Pilates trainers now for almost 15 years. She is now a loving mother of 3 incredible kids and is my personal private Pilates trainer and has been since 2015 when we first met and bonded over breathing exercises, inner size, if you will. I see her 2 times a week when I'm not out of town, and it's the appointment that I never change. It gets me focused on my deep core for an hour twice a week during my workday, which is usually so all-consuming I wouldn't take a minute to breathe probably otherwise. It's changed my poor alignment. It's changed my hips. It's changed my strength. It's changed my weak and dysfunctional core. It has strengthened my posture. It has improved my knee and foot pain, as well as my neck pain from sitting in front of a computer. It gets me moving. It makes me feel strong from the inside out. It has strengthened my deep core in a way that helps me run, jump, do gymnastics, and have the best sex ever. I am not kidding. This is all thanks to Pilates. I am so grateful to be able to introduce you to the brilliance that is Renee Meloche, also known as Pilates with Renee. She is the most technically sound trainer that I have ever worked with or met. Her anatomy and physiology knowledge is second to none, and I have gotten to geek out with her over healing my back deep within the core for years now. We've basically figured out how to put me back together to be whole, and it feels so good to move thanks to her help. I give her credit for helping me bend over and wash my face again without holding myself up after almost 3 years of not being able to. We're going to keep it straight and simple for you today, since this could have probably been a 2-hour podcast or more. I will definitely have her back on in the future. We started with the foundations today, and what is Pilates? I didn't know anything about it before I met Renee, and I know that everything changed for me once I learned. So let us dive into what Pilates is, what it's all about, how it can help you rehab your core, how it's very safe for you during pregnancy and newly postpartum. Yes, it's different than yoga, and there's a lot of differences between Pilates and yoga. So Pilates is really about core stabilization, mobility, and posture, and these things cannot be forgotten en route to strengthening our entire bodies. These are essential during pregnancy and especially postpartum because of all the changes that occur within. So Renee is your gal. I am going to introduce her now. We are hanging out today, having a blast. Enjoy, Fit Mama. Renee, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thanks for having me, Jen.
Oh, this has been a dream of mine for a little too long. Renee is such an inspiration and has been for me for so long that I've been trying to get her on the podcast because she is such a wealth of knowledge and her wisdom runs deep. So thank you for being here. This is really exciting.
Thank you so much. I'm excited that you're that excited about me.
Yeah. Well, so I want to dive right in because before I met you, I had heard the word Pilates hundreds of times perhaps, and being in the fitness industry for probably, I started working with you 2015, so it was at least 8 to 10 years, and I did my personal training certification in 2002. So it had been a good decade and a half probably, and I realized I didn't actually know what Pilates was because how we met, and funny enough, we're here in the same city, which is a real treat, and we met when you reached out to me and we connected. So let's talk about that. Bring us back to that time when we first met and how I first learned.
When I moved back to the city, I was on pregnancy number 2 shortly after that time. So I started following you on FitMama through one of my doulas, Jessica, who you also know.
Yes.
And I noticed as I was reading and following your challenges and the core breathing, as I read through it and did it, that the core breathing that you teach moms is the exact same concept as the Pilates breathing.
Yes.
And so Joseph Pilates, started all of this off many years ago in the 60s. He didn't patent anything before he passed away. So there's now a wide variety of Pilates companies, all teaching different certifications. So when you do a full certification in Pilates and learn the basic principles and the exercises, it can be very rehab based all the way to very sport specific. So the breathing principle, though, just on my own as an instructor, is something that I always took, a lot of value in and really wanted to focus on that. And something I always said to my students when I taught certifications as well as clients is that you want to feel it and you have to get that deep internal connection. Because if you're not getting that connection with all of your movement and have it choreographed and in sync, you're not really doing Pilates. Mm-hmm. You're kind of then just doing movement, maybe with some breath overlapped on it, but getting that core breathing that you teach in sync with all of these intricate or very fancy and elaborate movements.
I love that. And I love the emphasis on breathing. And I think that your knowledge of the breathing, once I connected with you and learned how much you understood the depths of the core. And when I first met you, I had already injured my back. So I was in the process of trying to figure out how I could strengthen my back, how I could rehab. And nobody that I knew, even physiotherapists in the city at the time, really understood the core and specifically its connection to breathing that you did. And I really love that you value that so much. And I think one of the things that really stands out for me is your differentiation between just doing the movements and then doing them sort of properly so you're engaging the deep core. So talk to us a little bit about that, what you're seeing and how people can really know if they go to a Pilates in their city and they're doing it right. I know a lot of Pilates instructors do a lot of crunches, and that's actually been one of the things that people are avoiding.
Yes.
Because they now know the
dangers. So for people in big cities that want to take classes, there is going to be a big difference from doing privates versus group. So that in itself is one challenge. I think another challenge, just as you mentioned, with knowledge overall and people knowing what Pilates is I do feel like in the loop of rehab, there's a bit of a missing connection that, doctors might say, oh, go do Kegels, or someone like yourself is trying to do this core breathing, but then the physios who do wonderful exercises that are very in sync with Pilates, sometimes they don't even know themselves what Pilates is on a rehab level and how to make all those pieces connect. So if you're just doing core breathing on its own, but then you go to the gym and lift heavy weights and hold your breath, you're almost undoing all the work that you've already, tried to do with your core breathing. So I want to bridge that gap. So bring the core breathing, the Pilates breathing principle into your movement.
Right.
A big key thing that people, miss with retraining your core is that your core is made up of 4 things, your deep core. So you have the pelvic floor itself, your diaphragm, which is why the breathing has to be so connected to connecting your pelvic floor, your transverse abdominis, which is your deepest layer of abdominal that literally wraps around you transversely like a corset into your thoracolumbar fascia. It runs from your pubic bone to your sternum. It's a broad, deep muscle, and a little tiny stabilizing muscle in your back, your multifidus, which is broader fibers across the SI joints and the sacrum, the pelvic area, and then is more segmental as it travels up your spine. So the 4 of them in a functioning, healthy body are wired to work together. So as you inhale, you want that lateral expansion. You want to let your diaphragm, or as I call it, like the jellyfish, to expand east to west, move the rib cage, create space. And as you exhale, you want to just gently fire that pelvic floor, which should then turn on the transverse abdominis and the multifidus. So it's breathing mindfully, and it's also getting your body to find that connection, because often we breathe very shallow. The shoulder and the upper torso area is a great place for holding tension. Everyone does this. So the back side of our body literally gets tight in the intercostals between each rib. They lose their ability to expand. So they end up kind of squishing the jellyfish or the diaphragm, and you lose that ability to expand and take a full inhale. And that lateral expansion or that posterior back breathing, the inhale is just as important as getting that exhale. So the expansion on the inhale is key in getting that lifting exhale connection to your pelvic floor, your transverse abdominis. If you're belly breathing only, or if you're really shallow chest breather only, it's hard to get that exhale to work for you. So both pieces have to come into play. That was a big anatomical rant, so
Yeah. Oh,
I forget where we started with that. But
you know what? It takes the depths of what I talk to even deeper, and it allows people to understand, because what I always talk about is these neural connections and the pathways. And I can find myself still standing in postures that I go, oh yeah, this is a real sort of leftover position from when I was pregnant. Because I remember arching my back like this, letting the belly hang, unfiring completely with any of my deep muscles. And I just kind of what I call let it all hang out, which felt so good. And after I was sort of the era where suck in your belly, squeeze it all tight, 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 not open, expand. For me, that was like, well, then I'll look like I'm fat. What am I talking about? Like, it's a very different mindset, which when I hurt myself, it was something I was very attracted to because it was so different from what I had known. And it felt so good because it was more aligned with no pain, all gain. That mentality of I don't have to be in pain. I don't have to be busting myself and wrenching my back. And I can't bend over without feeling twinges and shooting down my legs. Because if I stop and breathe and reconnect everything, then everything else feels better. And I think it's so hard to explain this to people. And I had to learn it the hard way, which is why I'm so passionate about sharing someone like yourself who understands the depths of it and works with people at all different stages. And you were really integral in helping me rehab my back, getting back to now moves that I never knew existed in Pilates. And I've been working with you for the better part of 4 years, which is crazy to think. Actually, no, more like 3.5 years, because I started working with you before we went on our trip around the world. Then I was gone for a number of months, came back. And I'm saying this to emphasize how long it takes to reconnect these neural pathways.
Yes, and I like that you're, a few things I want to touch on with what you've just said is, it's getting the neural pathways. So practicing the core breathing and then integrating these movements with it, you're getting that system to be smarter. You're getting it to fire quickly. So before we get up to move, your brain should already be sending that signal to your pelvic floor, transverse abdominis, that deep inner unit that I just explained. And that unit should kick on, I think it's like 2 milliseconds or something before you move. So they're considered anticipatory muscles to stabilize your lumbopelvic region in movement. So why do we do that in Pilates? And if we already know that we're going to move, why are we trying to hold it and do that? Because you want it to be a smarter system. And if you've had trauma in your low back, pelvis, etc., which often happens through being pregnant, labor, or not pregnant. I work with men as well and people that just have low back injuries, but that system shuts off. That system says, oh, okay, pain, and it literally just shuts down. So you do have to retrain it to be smart again, to fire, to, feel those connections. So that is one thing that is really key. And practice makes perfect. The more you do it, or even the more reps you do of the same exercise, which even today we saw that doing those leg lifts, the first 4 you still had a little twist in your hips, and by, after that everything got smooth and solid and stable. I think another big myth that we need to debunk is, or even just the mindset that young moms put all this pressure on themselves to lose the weight, look the way they used to look. I want to be skinnier, I want my flat stomach back, all of these things. But in pursuing that, they're actually injuring themselves. They're making their core weaker. And I feel like people really need to educate themselves on this. So if we think from the mom pregnancy post-rehab place, just in this concept of rehabbing your core, you have to think about where things started to change and grow. So baby started as, a little seed and nothing, and went from a peanut to an olive to a shrimp, and slowly expanded from the inside out, right? You probably even hid that for 3 months. So now when we go to rehab, we don't think inside out. We think outside. Let's fix my outside appearance. I want to be skinny. I want to be fitter. And trying to achieve that goal, we set ourselves up for failure, or we are pushing ourselves then in the CrossFit and the boot camp. And not that any of those things are wrong. There's just an appropriate time to do them. So these local stabilizers, this inner deep core that we're referring to, in muscle classifications, they are local stabilizers. So the key thing, and what I want everyone to take from this, is they respond to specific things. So your pelvic floor, your transverse abdominis, they do not respond to jumping up on boxes and doing, walking lunges with 20 pounds loaded on your shoulders. They don't respond to plyometrics. They respond to a whisper, to a low load, a slow movement, slow, controlled. So as soon as you add in more weight, bigger movements, when your global mobilizers are now doing the movement, your biceps, your rectus abdominis, the six pack, those bigger muscles, the inner unit, your deep core, if it's not functioning properly, you're just bypassing it. So it's almost like trying to put the siding up on your house when you haven't poured the foundation yet. So you need to have that strong foundation. You need those systems working before you can go to the heavier weights, the bigger movements. And if we don't do that properly and take the time to do that, give our bodies the time to heal, to do it properly, not be so hard on yourselves. And that's where we get the whole peeing our pants when we work out saga that everyone thinks is funny and we laugh about it. But reality is, you don't want to pee your pants for the rest of your life, plain and simple. I don't think anyone wants that. So I think it's looking at what's more important. Do I want to lose my weight really fast and beat myself up at the gym and be exhausted and not feel good? Or do I want to take the time to rehab slowly, feel good from the inside out, where it kind of all began?
Yes, I love that. And thank you so much for sharing that. That's, that's true wisdom. And it is, all those mistakes, quote unquote, or the things that, people go for. I went for those things because I was very much in that superficial mindset, not even understanding the deep core and the changes that go on. So it is such a, it's such an important piece of information, and it's so important to be educated so that we don't hurt ourselves, right? So that we don't demand these things of those around us either. Get up, what do you mean, right? Having this laziness mindset that we think we can be super mom instead, we can do all the things, right? So I think it's really important to have that understanding of the value of rest and us standing for it as women, as moms, and saying, hey, you just had a baby, rest.
Yes.
Every new mom, if I see on Facebook even, I hesitate because I think, well, they don't want advice, but I can't not share with them my motto of stay flat for 5, which is not taking the stairs for 5 days, not going up and down, not getting up and standing and cooking and walking and doing all those things, at least for the first 5 days. If 10 days works, that's great. But just giving them that permission and having them take a stand for themselves. Yes, there are so many times where that's not possible, and I understand those, but just knowing that going and pushing in those times isn't going to bring you that long-term success. And I'm glad that you brought up the incontinence because...
Yeah, incontinence and even just post-baby, like you're saying, to give yourself the time to rest. I think especially new moms, if it's your second or third, then some of this, you learn as you go. Yeah. But those first few days, yes, you're exhausted, you had a baby, but you're also running on adrenaline. Mm-hmm. It's new, it's exciting. Oh, yeah. You're anxious because you have this little human to take care of, and no matter what you prepared and washed and folded and prepped, it's still new, and you're somewhat on adrenaline. So for those first 2-3 days, you might feel great and think like, oh, I'm going to go out and walk for a mile and push the stroller. But it might be like day 10, day 20 that you realize, oh no, something's not right. Yeah. So yes, give yourself the time to rest and, move listen to your body. Breathe and listen and move as you're ready to move, and not forcing anything too quickly.
Yes, I mean, such important things to focus on is knowing that you can just slow down and focus on the baby, right? And that's the hardest thing sometimes when we have these expectations.
Hey, Fit Mama, I am interrupting this episode with Renee to talk about something that Renee and I are launching together. And it's very exciting. This is now available on my site at lovefitmama.com. It is a pregnancy and postpartum Pilates program. Absolutely straight from Renee. I vetted it. We checked it all out. It's a perfect program. It includes not only Pilates, but meditation, stability ball work, and some yoga as well. So we talk a lot about the different aspects in this program. There is an amazing opportunity for you to strengthen your core from the inside out, starting with while you're pregnant. She is actually pregnant in this program, and it's such a beautiful thing. So I am not going to tell you much more other than you can read about it over at lovefitmama.com/Pilates. The link is in the show notes below. So please have a listen to Renee as she's here, and just absolutely consider how you can introduce yourself to a safe form of exercise that has breathing at its core, and it's truly strengthening you from the inside out during your most vulnerable time, which is during pregnancy. So Renee is the one to take you through this. This program is such a game changer. It has helped so many women. She's been selling it in a different format for years now, and it really is a fantastic program. So I'm so glad we can bring it to you through Fit Mama. And the program is only $47 on the website. So go over to lovefitmama.com/Pilates and have a checkout, see the video, see some information that explains what the program is all about. It's a very simple program, easy for you to follow in the comfort of your own home. You don't even need any equipment. And if you don't have a stability ball, that is okay. So if you are pregnant, Fit Mama, or you know someone who is, inform them about this. Have them listen to this podcast today, because Renee is a wealth of knowledge that any pregnant or postpartum Fit Mama will really benefit from. Enjoy the rest of the show.
So talk to us briefly about the kind of things that you see coming into the clinic for you, or coming into your studio, working with you one-on-one. You know, what are some of these injuries that women are getting postpartum, and what should we really look out for? Like you said, something all of a sudden just doesn't feel right. You know, that's what a lot of clients say to me. It's like, okay, I know something's wrong down there. I just don't know what.
Yes.
But I'm either having pain when I'm having sex, or it feels weird when I sit on the toilet. Something just feels heavy. What can people look for? Talk to us about some of the symptoms or some of the things people come to you with, and then you go, okay, this is generally what I see.
Yes.
Or then what would you recommend for people in those beginning stages?
So I think, specifically for moms, living in pain for the rest of your life is not necessary. So any doctor or trainer or anyone that has said like, oh, well, now we're just going to pee our pants when we do jumping jacks, they're uneducated. They don't know what they're talking about. It's honestly ignorance, and it makes me very sad that they're training and teaching people and they don't have this knowledge. So that being said, things to check for, I fully support seeing a pelvic floor physio as soon as you have any sign of discomfort. And keep in mind that this discomfort, it might not show up as pain, in your pelvic floor muscles.
And this is even for C-sections. I've had a lot of people say, I had a C-section, so I'm exempt from this.
No, this could be perfect pregnancy, perfect labor, C-section, everything on your wish list. It's more so just your body has been transformed for 9 months and pulled and stretched. And like the pain could show up through shooting pain down your inner thighs. The pain might show up, in your mid-back, because a lot of people always refer to lordosis from pregnancy. Well, depending on the length of your torso and your postural norm before pregnancy, it could be more that it's your mid-thoracic spine that's being really pulled on. It could be shoulder girdle issues from tightness in your pecs, not only from being pregnant, but then carrying the baby in the car seat and the nursing. Yes, all of that. So I think a few things to test yourself for is one, the pelvic floor itself, seeing a pelvic floor physio, and ask that physio to do an internal exam. They snap the glove, get it done. That's why you're going, because no one else does that. That's their specialty, and ask that they do that. Because I've also heard of some pelvic floor physios not doing that. And it's like, well, then why go? You could have just went to a normal physio. So request that. It's nothing more invasive than we've done as women through any other procedures. You've had a baby at this point. So you want that to be checked out. Getting tested for a DR, to see if you have that split down your rectus. And not that that's a horrible thing or that it's not normal. I would say most women do get some degree of that split down the center of the six-pack. It's the linea alba, which is a fascial line, and the six-pack muscles get pulled open. So there's specific ways to test for that. And why it's important is because then you want to pick and choose your exercise program based on that. So if you do have any kind of pelvic floor dysfunction and or if you have that split, that DR, there's certain movements then that you would avoid, like things that you've talked about, the crunching, full planks. And again, it's not that these movements are quote unquote bad or that we're never going to do them again. But if you're doing them with that dysfunction already happening, you're making it worse. So when you do crunches, when you hold planks, if you're creating pressure, if your stomach is pushing out when you exercise, your pelvic floor is bearing down. We don't want things to push out and bear down. You're basically telling your body like, yes, I want to pee my pants. And every time you exercise with that feeling, pressure in the belly pushing out, pressure down through your pelvic floor, you're creating more dysfunction in your core instead of training in a way that's going to remember, we want those muscles to be smarter. We want their timing faster, their endurance muscles. You should always feel lifted, not because you're sucking in or holding, but because you're training that deep core group to work together as a team.
I love that.
So my goal with clients is not that they're never going to move their spine towards flexion again. Your body's meant to flex forward. If you're ever going to tie your shoes again, you have to be able to flex your spine. If you're going to bend over and pick up your kids' toys, you're going to flex your spine. It's more so rehabbing your core and incorporating those movements again, whether it's a crunch or a different kind of Pilates-like spinal flexion. You do it at the right time and you work privately with someone that can see that in your body or teach you how to see that and feel that in your own body. So I'm really big on hands-on, getting clients to put their own hands on their body so you can start to educate yourself and feel when you're getting it right and when you're pushing out and doing it incorrectly.
Well, that was a really big lesson for me because I found, I was a gymnast growing up, so I was really hyper flexible and I naturally kind of stood, off to one side, really misaligned. I didn't realize how these things were actually affecting me. When I did see a pelvic floor physio, she taught me that one side of my pelvic floor was super tight because I was always doing that stand on one hip and then jut the other leg out, which totally pushed my spine out. And once I hurt myself, this was all it was like the straw that broke the camel's back and the whole house crumbled to a point where I go, oh my gosh, I've been doing things this way since I was 8 years old and started doing back flipping around on my backyard. And also that the fitness moves that I was doing and, the positions in conventional fitness, where you're kind of like holding a certain stance while you're lifting weights, this just perpetuated my problems instead of gave me a strong, deep foundation. So maybe you can talk to that and maybe the differences with going back right to fitness without core rehab and this breathing and reconnecting the core and rehabbing versus, not doing that, right? Going back to fitness and then and not doing that versus starting with what do we start with? And I know it's never too late. So even if your kids are 55 here right now, you can start core rehab now. And it's not too late.
Never too late. I also do hypopressives, which is excellent for the new moms.
I'm going to ask you about that next. So
okay, so
hold off on that one.
Just back to the age thing. So aside from the new moms, I also have clients. My oldest client right now is 83. So I see a lot of injuries, prolapse. I have 2 clients right now with rods in their spine, hip replacements, knee replacements, bulging discs. So this rehab concept is excellent for new moms, but it's also excellent for anyone with any kind of lumbopelvic issue, and anyone that wants to focus on their posture. So going back to what you're saying about realizing how out of line, quote unquote, your posture was from maybe a young age on, part of that's genetics. Part of it's what we do as, children. So I dance. So when I started doing Pilates, I was so floppy and hypermobile that I felt like Pilates made me feel tight. But, now that I'm more educated, even from when I started doing Pilates in, 97, I realize now that that tight feeling I was getting was being stronger and being more connected and finding where that postural plumb line should be. So all of us need to know what our postural deviations are. And unless you're working with someone that's going to address that and actually knows what that is themselves, it's hard to make those corrections. So as an example, after you've had baby, it's very common that you end up with more of an anteriorly tilted pelvis, which creates more lower doses, more flared rib cage, which also creates more spinal extension. And then we're fighting against that with our shoulders feeling tight too, from being pregnant, breast growing, nursing, holding, lifting, carrying. So all of those things put together, if you're now standing, lifting weights, your spine is in the wrong position. So you're taking a system that's meant to be in one position, it's now in the wrong position, and you're adding more weight to that vulnerable, incorrect alignment. So we want to focus on abdominal strength, hip extensor, glute hamstring strength. That's going to start to bring the pelvis back. It's going to elongate the spine, which often we think lengthen and we lift our chest and our chin and we actually arch more. So you want to think lengthening by closing the front of your corset. So feeling the abdominal wall lift from underneath pelvic floor. Feeling the rib cage soften, and almost think of closing the front rib bones like you're zipping up a corset, or like closing a blouse, zipping up a cardigan. And by creating that length through your back line, you might feel like you're actually folded forward because you've brought yourself into such a weird position. And again, this is like a very cookie cutter example. So every person's body is different. You have to look at people individually and make those subtle corrections. And then the challenge becomes maintaining those corrections while you move. Because you don't want anything to stay so rehab based that it's stagnant and you're not moving. Everything needs to get to a place of function. And that for me, especially with my older clients, we focus a lot on, function, balance, getting them to breathe, taking away all those layers of tension and, not breathing deep for so many years, and getting them to a place of, what's functional for you? What are your goals? If your goal is to push 200 pounds across the gym floor, that's great. Set that goal for yourself, but how does it feel in your body? And how is that functional for you at the end of the day?
Yeah, which is, the long term, we think it's so far away, but we know that women, adults in general, older adults are getting admitted to nursing homes because of things like incontinence or things that their kids don't really want to take care of anymore.
Yes, and that was one of the things I was saying about my older clients. I missed that point to connect all that back together. But what you're saying about there's no timeline.
Right.
So strengthening your pelvic floor and these deep core muscles, yes, you can start at any time.
Yeah.
So, and I've had women come to me in their 50s, 60s, 70s that are still struggling with prolapse and incontinence.
Yeah.
And no one's ever taught them to do any of these things. And then people go for, bladder suspension or surgery. And so you can start doing this breathing at any stage.
Awesome.
Even if your kids are, teenagers versus adults that have their own kids.
Yeah.
There's no timeline.
Definitely. That's such a great point. So you touched on it earlier, and I want to bring it back because it is something that I've been recommending more and more people find out about because of the benefits to the deep core that you mentioned earlier, and this is hypopressive. So can you tell us a little bit about hypopressives? Almost 100% of people, when I mention this, they've never heard of it. They have no idea what it is. I've mentioned it before, and I talk about it in the book, but Talk to us about it. You went for a training, you know all about it. Tell me.
Yes, I went for training in Toronto, and I do recommend if you're, in the fitness industry, it's something that's valuable to add to, whatever it is that you're doing. So basically, we create a lot of pressure downward. So gravity, weights, sport specific. I trained with Trista Zinn in Toronto, and she really focused on this being, for everyone, including athletes who have a lot of these issues just from the strain they put on their body. That being said, it's perfect for moms because everything, got moved around, pushed around, created pressure. So hypopressives is a breathing technique. It does complement Pilates, but it is its own thing. You can start laying down. There are specific postures, and it's basically creating an apnea. So you create a vacuum within that deep core. So it's that inhale, the lateral expansion that I already mentioned is even more important because you want to open and create space. And then through this breathing technique, you essentially hold your breath, creates this vacuum, and it lifts your pelvic floor and all of your internal organs up. And there's been real-time ultrasound done more than once. You can see this in studies where women's bladders was the one video that we watched. You see it literally lift right up in the body. So anyone that has any kind of, not just prolapse, but just restoring from being pregnant and the weight of the baby sitting on you, if there's any trauma during a natural labor, or if you had a C-section, everything was still squished and shifted and moved around. So creating this lift, you're lifting everything back up in a non-aggressive way. Mm-hmm. You're really just doing a breathing technique like the Pilates. It is an art form that takes a while to maybe feel or, get that deeper connection. But the more you do it, the deeper that lifting sensation gets. And it's really about creating length and space and decompressing your pelvic floor.
And it feels so good.
It feels really cool.
I love it. We've been doing it for a while now, and it just feels amazing. And I now on my own workouts, I will go after I've done my workouts, as we've talked about, there's that downward pressure. And so I do a few of these hypopressive breaths at the end of my workout, and it just feels so good. That vacuum that you talk about,
yes.
It just feels so, the lifting, like you say, and the elongating. And I actually leave my workouts walking around, and it's almost like that feeling where things are at a different perspective, as if you're wearing heels. I feel so much taller enough that I can notice a difference. And if I go down to my kitchen, I've noticed this in real time, I'll work out in the morning, do a few hypopressive breath, and go into my kitchen and be like, oh my gosh, I'm taller. Yeah. That much of a difference just from a couple breaths. It's so effective.
It's very effective, and it's very simple if you take the time to explore it. Yeah. It seems abstract at first, but it's actually a very real thing. Yeah. And it's almost like the more you can let go and just let it happen, the more you'll feel that nice lift. Yeah. A good friend of mine, Peggy, who is an amazing therapist in Alberta, she inspired me to take this course. And another example she gave was not only like after your workout, but even if you've been carrying stuff, like you just carried all the groceries in, and you've just created that pressure because you carried in, 10 bags of groceries and the kids and the car seat and the this and the that. Lay down and do a few hypopressives. It takes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and you restore that core just through this simple breathing technique.
I love that. I love that. And, giving yourself that 5 minutes. And I love even just the fact that if we can get that far to say, hey, I've just carried all the kids in, done all these things, put down the groceries. If we take that 5 minutes and step away from all the stuff that we need and unload all the groceries, if we can take that 5 minutes and do the breathing, that has the double effect, right? Not only does it relieve the pressure inside our core, how much does it relieve the pressure on us, right?
Yes, take time to breathe. Nice. I mean, I know it's hard when you have kids, but have the kids lay on the floor with you. They can mimic what you're doing, even if they're not really doing it. Yeah. Make it something that everyone's going to take time to do.
Well, and I think I want to contrast quickly, because you did mention the video that you saw with the bladder lifting, and I want to contrast that with what we've seen with women who are doing crunches when they're not restored.
Yes.
And they have, one specific video that is literally the camera is on the vagina. So it is like this person is full frontal. They're coming up and doing a crunch, and you can see the prolapse coming out of the vagina.
And it's interesting that you bring up that example, because also in the hypopressives course, Trista showed us videos of that same angle doing hypopressives, though, where you see everything lift and draw up and in.
Ooh, I love
so if you are already living with some dysfunction and your go-to is crunches to restore your core, you're doing the opposite. Because every time you crunch up, your belly's probably bulging out and your pelvic floor is pushing down. So even if you don't have a prolapse, that video is graphic because she did have a prolapse, and you're seeing each time she crunches, everything literally pushes out of her body. So the hypopressives and the Pilates, hand in hand, which is why I did that training, they work to do the opposite of that. To lift, pull up and in, and ideally that's where you want stuff to live, is not falling out.
No. And, it's like you said, it's become a joke that we have incontinence as moms, and we laugh when, and we pee and we run up the stairs and we pee, and that's life. And it's really not, right? It's not something we have to live with.
It's the incontinence, pain during sex. I mean, your sex life shouldn't end just because you've had babies. That's something that should feel good and that you want to enjoy, not only for yourself, but for your partner.
I think it's only the beginning. I can't tell you how many women feel more comfortable with themselves than ever, which is one of the key things to a good sex life. And I'm telling you, like, if you're having pain, you are really missing out.
Yes, and there's no reason for that pain. So go see your pelvic floor physio, come see me, do hypopressives, Pilates. Also women through menopause with dryness issues, the hypopressives creates more natural lubrication. So there's tons of benefits to it for all different walks of life.
I love this. Thank you so much, Renee.
Thank you so much.
This has been an absolute pleasure. Your wisdom is so valued.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for sharing. And
Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, we'll see you in the Pilates studio.
Thanks.
Well, wasn't that everything that you wanted today, Fit Mama? I love talking with Renee. I love listening to her explain things. I love her knowledge and wisdom when it comes to the core and core rehabilitation. She has a lot of different areas of background, areas of study. She's someone who's been doing Reiki for almost 20 years now, which I didn't even know what it was. Probably about 10 years ago. So it's pretty awesome, her wealth of knowledge. Like I said, I'll have her back on again at some point because I see her twice a week still. Lucky me, I love hanging out with her. So enjoy. I hope you got something from today's podcast. I can't wait to hear from you. Please send me a note. Let me know how you're doing, Fit Mama, or come hang out in our Fit Mama Facebook group. The link is in the show notes. Have a great day. Namaste.